So looking at love, or looking at life through love's eyes, what does that mean? Does it mean a romantic thing? Is there a special way where we see only the good in life? We talk about the idea that God is love. And then you ask the question, if God is love, why is there so much pain in the world? Why are there so much killing? Why is there so much of this? Why is there so much of that? Why is all of this happening if God is all there is and God is love? Does that make sense? Can the mind even grasp that? See, I think what we have to do first is we have to come out of this idea that there's an anthropomorphic God. In other words, we have to come out of the idea that this God presence, this infinite, this universal intelligence is made in mankind's image. You see, this is what we've done. We've anthropomorphized this essence, this beingness, this creative power, and we've given it a man form. And having given it a man form, we've given it man qualities, and those qualities are that it judges, that it has wrath, that it punishes, that it rewards. Think about it. How small must that God be? If you are the infinite, ever-expressing beingness of the One, you created everything out of yourself. Would you ask yourself to worship you? Think about that. That's not love. Love is allowing. Love is accepting. Love is free. So I want to start and I want to build a new idea for you. And that idea is that life is neutral. It does not have favorites. It treats everybody the same. Now, how can I make that statement? Well, that statement's real easy to make. If the infinite has chosen to individualize itself as points of consciousness in life, which we are individual points of consciousness. Everything out of us is the divine expressing. So we are that point of consciousness, right? So if we're that point of consciousness and we are the aspect of God, wouldn't we have all the qualities of God within us? Wouldn't we have all the power of God within us as it pertains to us as a point of consciousness? You see, my point of consciousness is unique and all-powerful toward who Lee is. It has nothing to do with who Jean is. So I have no power over Jean, but I have full power over what I experience. Did you hear the words there? I have full power over what I experience, not what I create. Because there are times in our lives when we are interacting with other people that they have an impact on us. We may not create that, what they do, but we create our response to that. The other aspect is we have all these unconscious thoughts within our minds. Those unconscious thoughts create experience, and many of the time we have no idea. So many people have no idea why they have an illness, why they lose a job, why this happens, why that happens. It's because there's unconscious patterns of thought that are going on within our minds all times, and those unconscious patterns of thought attract to us experiences. And when we're surprised, it's because we're seeing life differently. Here's a key about being an infinite expression of God. Everyone is living in infinite possibilities. It doesn't matter where you're born, what color you are, whatever. You are living in infinite possibilities. You have the ability to experience anything you want if you put your focus there. Anything you want, you can experience it. Remember, experience has nothing to do with form. I want to take that out. I want to take that out of the illusion. Form is only valuable based on the experience you associate with the form. So why is it that we can go back to the days of ancient Greece, and you see the pictures of the Greeks or the Romans, and they're very full-bodied women. But today, you look at a supermodel, and she's as thin as a beanpole. Is one better than the other? Absolutely not. The only thing that makes one more attractive than the other is the perception through which we see it. That's true about everything in life. There are two sides to everything. Do you agree with that? There's always a positive and a negative. If there's hate, there's joy. If there's poor, there's wealth. If there's light, there's dark. If there's round, there's square. There's always opposites, right? So everything exists in a polarity, in a balance. There's always that. If I'm going to see through the eyes of God, I will look at my wife through the eyes of God. When I look at my wife through the eyes of God, I am no longer infatuated with her. I no longer put her on a pedestal. I no longer put her beneath me. I hold her right here. When I'm holding her right here, I'm seeing all aspects of her. I'm seeing the aspects of all the support, all the beauty, everything that I love, everything that I would infatuate on, and everything that I have infatuated on. And now, because I've known her for so long, I will see everything that, based on my values, I don't care for. So I'm seeing the full person right here. And in the eyes of love, I accept it as it is. You see, that's love. Because that's how God sees it. That's how the divine sees it. The divine doesn't see just when you're a good boy or a good girl. The divine doesn't see that. The divine cannot judge. Why? Because judgment can only take place in time and space. If there's no time and no space, there's no judgment. So when you get into the idea, if you go into a deep, deep state of meditation, in that moment when you are so in the now, there's no possibility of you judging because there's nothing in the past, there's nothing in the future from which to go against. You're in the now, so no judgment can happen. You are living in a state of love. It's very different than what you've heard about what relationships are for. See, I've come to understand that my relationship serves a purpose in my life. It supports me and it grows me. And the only reason we stay in relationships, whether they are mate relationships, whether they're familial relationships, whether they're social relationships, whether they're work relationships, the only reason we go into that relationship and stay in a relationship for however long we do, as long as it supports and grows us. If it is no longer supporting and growing us, we're moving out. How many times have people been in a job and say, you know, I'm making a nice income, but I'm not growing? And they'll go to another job where there's a lot more risk, a lot more this, but they see it as an opportunity to become more. Because we are eternally evolving in our ability to become a greater awareness. In the greater awareness, we have a greater experience, and that's the DNA within us that's desiring to do that. Here's the big one. What makes us unique is our belief about ourselves and about life. This is the key to understanding who you are. So I would invite you to stop worrying about what anyone else is thinking. You should not care in the least what your mother thinks about you, what your father thinks about you, what your brother thinks about you, what your sister thinks about you, what your spouse thinks about you. You shouldn't care about any of that. Because the second you care about what someone believes about you, you are giving away your power and you are no longer going to allow yourself to be your uniqueness. And when you're not being your uniqueness, you're going to be denying them the opportunity to love you. Do you hear that? Because if you're not being all of you, how can they accept all of you? Because you're hiding part of you. You see, we've gotten into this idea of conditionality. And that just doesn't work. So I want to go to the next, I think this is my DeMartini quote of the day. The more our awareness expands, the greater our ability to love. And when I use the word love, it's without condition. It's not romantic love. It's the embracing and the accepting of all that is. So in every situation in our lives, here's what happens. Situations come into our lives. We get the infatuation stage. We see the infatuation. Then we see the other side. We finally get to a point, however it may be through 3, 4, 5, 7 marriages. We'll see the other side. We'll be able to see balance. Oh, I got it. I finally got it. Guess what happens? We move to another level of awareness. And in that new awareness, what happens? We're going to get more contrast coming at us, right? The illusion that we've bought into, and it's the illusion of the American dream, it's the illusion of positive thinking, is that there's a one-sided life out there. There's just life. And the idea is to embrace it, to embrace the fullness, to embrace the balance, to know that we're always going to be challenged because it's through challenge that we grow. The key thing that I want you to understand is, so why bother? I believe within each individual that we have a DNA. That DNA is something about what juices us, what turns us on, what really causes us to get excited so that we wake up in the morning and we want to do it. We want to do something, and when we do that, we've got energy. Time goes by, we miss meals, we'll stay up late, we'll talk about it all the time, we'll get juiced with it. When you're that juiced about something, you don't see anything as in the way. You see it as on the way. And when you see everything in balance, you're not deterred. Why are you not deterred? Because you've got a mission, you've got a goal, and you've determined that goal. And when it's a self-determined goal, my God, you'll do anything for it. But if it's a goal that your wife or your husband or your parents or your work has forced on you that goes against that DNA in you, that's your value, you're going to procrastinate, you're not going to do it, you're going to do it at a very low level of consciousness, it's not going to be good. You see, when we are tapped into that which we are not doing a job, but we are being of service by bringing our gifts into the world. And when we bring in our gifts in the world, there are unique gifts. And when there are unique gifts, people want to be with us, and they are willing to remunerate back to us because they're receiving. See, the greatest way we've been taught, you got to go to a job and you got to work. No, you don't go to a job to go to work. You go to a job to be of service. You're not in a relationship to just make whoopee. You're in a relationship to serve the other person. How are you serving the other person? You're supporting them and you're growing them. Everything is energy and it all intertwines. And we get to choose how we use that intertwined energy. We get to choose how we focus on it. And the more we focus on being of service, of using our unique gifts, more comes back to us. So if you're seeking more wealth, really know what your gifts are. And live to those gifts and give more of it and give more of it. And you never think about the idea how much is coming back to me. You never worry about that because when you're giving your gift, you know it's going to come back. And here's the thing. It may not come back from where you give it. It may come from this source that you don't even aware of. It happens all the time. Well, I gave here. Well, how did that happen? I mean, at Agape, we put out our talks every Sunday. We're on YouTube, we're on Vimeo, and we do podcasts on iTunes. We have probably 25 times the number of people watching the talks each week than come to Sunday service. Last month, we hit over 9,000 downloads on iTunes. 9,000 downloads. We're up to 150 or so on YouTube and about 50 on Vimeo. So think about that. So we do a collection every week, don't we? And so people give for what they receive. I don't worry about what you give because I know the universe is supplying us. And every now and then we'll get a check for $2,000 from someone we've never met. a check for $1,000 from someone in another part of the country or the world. Because what's happening is people are being spiritually fed. And when they're being spiritually fed and they're mature, they give back. So you see, we never question it. We just bring service. And I'm using agape as an example because I want you to understand that you can enrich your life by being of service to each and every person in your life. And you don't do it as if it were something I got to do. You do it because it's your gift. It's who you are. It's where you're unique. This was a big revelation for me yesterday. I teach that there is one power, one presence, one life, and it's universal intelligence. Call it God, call it Buddha, call it whatever you want to call it. Infinite mind, call it spirit. I teach it's universal intelligence. Those are the words that Ernest Holmes wrote. He called it universal intelligence. Why? Because it's everywhere. It's omnipresent, omnipotent, and omnipotent, meaning all-powerful, everywhere present, and always has been and always will be. There's no place that this power is not. Okay, universal mind. What we are is we are a point of consciousness within universal mind. Okay, in universal mind, in the infinite, is there anything other than the infinite? No. Because to have something other than infinite means there would be two infinites, and it's impossible. There's only one infinite, because the infinite is the seen, the unseen, the known, and the unknown. There can't be anything other than it. So if I'm a point of, and in the infinite, everything's in balance, because there's no duality. There's both the light and the dark. There's the red and the blue. Everything's in balance in the infinite. So if I'm a point of consciousness in the infinite, I must be in balance too. And think about this. Think about this creative power that there are 7 billion people, 7+ billion people on this planet. Every one of them is having over 60,000 thoughts a day, making all sorts of conscious and unconscious decisions, and yet in every moment their life is in perfect balance. Think about the intelligence that would keep everything in balance. Wow. And that's just the human form. We're not talking about the trillions of planets and solar systems and amoebas and plants and animals. Think about all of that. This universal intelligence has got everything in balance. That's how powerful it is. Our role is to become aware of it. That's our role, to become like the infinite. See, love is the ability to see both sides of any situation in any moment. When you're in love, you are seeing through the eyes of God. When Jesus was on the cross, he saw, Father, why have you forsaken me? And then he goes, into your hands I commend my spirit. He saw both sides. He saw his human form in pain, but he saw his divine form coming out. And he saw the balance so he could embrace and surrender into the moment. You see, that's the beauty of it. When you can see the good and the not good, if we want to call it that, and we get into it, we surrender into the moment because we understand it's in balance. And now we can move through it because that's our role, is to move beyond it, to transcend, to become awakened, to become aware, to become enlightened. Means to go beyond the illusion and go to the truth. And the truth is it's always in balance. It has to be. Otherwise we would self-destruct. And yet we're eternal beings. Isn't that just the coolest thing? Here's the thing. You can't escape love. Because love is always going to be drawing to you being in balance. So what happens? People get too much good over here. What do? Something sabotages over here, doesn't it? I'm not doing so good over here. What happens? Something good happens over here. The problem is, we in our awareness are not programming ourselves to see both sides. I watched this over and over and over again yesterday, where some of the most dramatic instances of human experience, where people came up and they were brought up and they were asked to say, in the very moment that you perceive this hellacious act happening to you, how were you supported equally? And I don't know. And how? And it always came out. The subconscious mind in that moment, the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind, subconscious mind sees it all. The conscious mind has been programmed to only see one side. And see, that's when we take our power back. When we can see things in its allness, we go into a state of peace. Because we understand everything's in balance. What happens when everything's in balance? Think about the outcome of that. We have health. Where does health happen? Health happens when it's dis-ease, when we're out of balance, when we're only seeing one side. When we see everything in balance, what are we doing? We're going back to our state of consciousness. This is a state of the universal mind. In the state of the universal mind, there is no disease. There's just what is. If we're looking at abundance, in the money aspect, if we're at that place of seeing both and we're being of service to our highest values, money's going to start to flow. But if we only see it as one way or the other way, it's going to cut off or we're going to lose it. Relationships. Relationships will never, ever, ever, ever last and be of value if you're only infatuated with your partner. If you're only hoping to see the good, the beauty, and all of that we've been programmed to. We have to embrace that there are both sides to the relationship. We have to accept that. We have to love it. We have to see how it supports and grows us. I would like to tell you that this is the universal truth. I will tell you it's only what I believe. It's only what I believe because it's what's worked for me. With all the study I continue to do, I continue to evolve in my awareness of this. Every time I go, and I go to a teacher, because I like to go out and study as well, through my reading, through being with other people of like minds, hearing different modalities, I get to refine and test. See, I love the idea of testing. And I went back to many instances yesterday as I was going through the process with my wife and with my sons and with other people in my life, and I said, in the very moment that I had that experience, how was the other happening? How did I not see it? And every time I found balance. When I came home last night and I lied in bed, I felt the deepest love I felt in my entire life. I was so in a state of equanimity. Equanimity meaning perfect balance. It's a state that every guru tries to get into in meditation. You see, sometimes we can't get into meditation because our mind is so chattered. But if we balance the mind and we see both sides, it collapses and neither side has a pull on us. In the collapsing, we've taken control back. We have become the universal mind functioning at the individual level. And at the individual level now, we are expressing love the way God expresses love. I invite you to consider that. I invite you to get this talk on YouTube, podcast, listen to it again, and write down your questions. Because very soon we're going to have a Sunday where it's going to be Question the Minister. And I'll get up here and I'll take whatever question you've got. And with every question you got, that will be the case. And that will be Sunday the 17th. So Sunday, April 17th, will be Question the Minister Sunday. And we'll hand out paper, we'll give you any question you want, and we'll explore those questions. So I invite you, if that's something that entices you, bring your doubting friends as well. I love doubting people. Remember, my job is not to make you feel comfortable unless you're uncomfortable. But if you're too comfortable, my job is to piss you off. Because when I do that, I cause you to think. And when you think, I'm empowering you. In that moment, I get to be the spiritual guide. And my choice is to be that with anyone who desires it. Let's go within. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world.
I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.